I had been in Subvault 11 for 6 hours by then, moving through the compliance inventory row by row, tagging each artifact with its reference number and logging its condition status. Dormant, 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 and I was tired in the particular way you get tired when you have been careful for too long. My senior, archivist Brennan, had cleared out at the 3rd hour. He had a briefing to file and a transit connection to catch, and he trusted me with the closeout. I had been on the Vel Ossian repository for 11 weeks. I was 29 years old, and this was my first heritage posting. The subvault smelled of pressurized cold and old mineral, something between iron and river stone, the way very old things smell when they have been sealed in recirculated air for longer than any civilization I could name. The lighting was blue-white and flat. The repository's senior staff called Subvault 11 the quiet room, and I had thought that was just archivists being archivists, finding dignity in dull spaces. By the 6th hour I understood. It was genuinely quiet in there. Not silent. The air cyclers ran, and somewhere behind the wall panels a harmonic hum sat just below the range of normal hearing. But quiet in the way a held breath is quiet. The Ossian sphere sat in an open-face case on the last shelf, bottom row, unlabeled except for a strip of old laminate with its catalogue number in faded ink, VOR 11-0044. It was smaller than I had expected from the briefing files, palm-sized, for seat, the colour of obsidian but not quite. In the blue-white light it looked like compressed night. Like someone had pressed the darkest hour of a moonless sky into a solid object and let it cool. The briefing file said, "No activation response in 4,200 years of repository custody. All formal analysis attempts, contact probe, resonance scan, spectral array, returned null. Item status, dormant.
Handle per standard inert artifact protocol."
I logged it, tagged the case, picked up the sphere with my bare hand because I had already stowed my handling gloves in my kit bag, and I was only moving it 6 centimeters to align it for the shelf photograph. It was not a formal contact. It was not a test. I was just setting it straight. It warmed the moment my palm closed around it. Not heat, warmth. The difference matters. Heat is a measurement. Warmth is a quality. The sphere warmed the way a stone warms after it has been sitting in sunlight for a long afternoon, holding the memory of it. I stopped moving. The sphere sat in my hand and was warm, and the facets that had been black began to do something that I can only describe as paying attention. The first glyph lit at the base of the sphere, a single facet brightening from within, pale amber, like a lamp behind very old glass. Then the second, adjacent to it. Then a third. Not rapidly, not in a burst, deliberately. One at a time, in a sequence that moved around the sphere the way a dial moves, the way something checks its own systems after a long sleep. I watched the glyphs travel the facets and I did not put it down because putting it down felt wrong. Not dangerous. Wrong. Like interrupting someone mid-sentence. Above me, through the subvault's observation window, a light came on. The monitoring station on level 4. Someone was watching. The 4th glyph lit. The 5th. The harmonic hum behind the wall panel shifted, not louder, but cleaner, like a frequency that had been searching finding its lock. I felt it in my back teeth the way you feel a certain pitch of sound, and then I felt it lower than that, somewhere in the bones of my hands, in the long bones of my forearms. The sphere and I were vibrating at the same frequency, and I had not done anything to make that happen. By the time the 12th glyph lit, every facet on the sphere's upper hemisphere was active. By the 15th, the whole object glowed with a light that was neither amber nor gold but something between them, a color I would not have had a name for before that moment, which I now think of simply as old. The color of a signal that has been traveling long enough to carry the weight of distance. The door of the subvault opened. Not the hatch to level 3, the sealed emergency access from the monitoring station above. I heard footsteps on the access ladder. I heard Archivist Senior Pelleran's voice. She was the repository's deputy director, and I had spoken to her exactly twice in 11 weeks, saying something in a low urgent tone to whoever was behind her. Then the access door at the subvault's rear opened and she was standing 10 meters away from me, and 3 other senior staff were behind her, and none of them moved. Pelleran looked at the sphere, then at me. Her face did something I had never seen a senior archivist's face do, which was stop being composed. I held the sphere. The glyphs completed their circuit and held their light. All of them, every facet, the entire object now bright and steady and patient. The harmonic in the wall panels was a tone now, clear and low, a single sustained note that seemed to fill the subvault not by getting louder but by becoming more itself. Then the sphere spoke. Not through the air. Not a sound, exactly, though I heard it, and so did everyone in that room, because I saw it land on their faces, saw Pelleran's hand go to her chest. The sphere spoke in the way a very old frequency speaks when it finally reaches its target. Not transmitted, not broadcast, but completed. The signal closing its circuit. At last, the signal returns. 5 words. I heard them in my own language, which was impossible, because the Ossian sphere was built by a civilization that died 4,000 years before humans made their first radio contact with the wider galaxy. I heard them not in translation but as meaning, the way you understand something in a dream, the understanding arriving whole, without mechanism. I stood in the blue-white light of subvolt 11 and I felt the sphere's warmth travel from my palm up through my wrist, and I understood that it was not metaphor. The sphere had been broadcasting. For 4,200 years, it had been sending a signal outward into the galaxy, patient and steady, the way a lighthouse sends its beam not because it sees the ship but because the ship is coming. It had not been waiting for a bloodline. It had not been waiting for a king or a maker or an heir. It had been waiting for a frequency. The civilization that built the Ossian sphere had catalogued 1,000 species. They had measured every form of life they encountered against a spectrum of resonances, biological, neurological, electromagnetic. They had found, in most species, frequencies they recognized, harmonics of their own making, close but not quite aligned, like instruments in an orchestra tuned to different scales. And then they had died, in whatever quiet or violent way civilizations end, leaving the sphere behind as a kind of message in a bottle, aimed not at a people but at a signal, aimed at whatever carried that one specific frequency they had found and never, in their time, been able to locate the source of. The frequency lived in human bioelectricity, in the particular hum of the human nervous system, the specific signature of a human hand closing around a warm stone. They had measured it somehow, somewhere, and they had aimed the sphere at it, and they had not lived to see the arrow land. I had not known I was carrying anything. I had not known I was the signal. I thought I was a junior archivist with tired feet and a compliance form to finish. None of this arrived as revelation in that moment. It arrived as recognition. The slow, heavy kind, the kind that doesn't startle you because somewhere underneath the surprise you already knew. Like a word in a language you were never taught, that you have always understood. Pelleran spoke behind me. Her voice was careful and quiet, the way you are careful and quiet near something that has been sleeping for a very long time. Vam. Can you set it down? I don't think so, I said. Not yet. She didn't argue. She stood with her senior staff behind her and they watched, and the sphere held its light, and the harmonic held its note, and subvolt 11 held its breath. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the cold to come back into my feet. Long enough for the ambergold light to stop being shocking and become something like ordinary, the way any light becomes ordinary if you stand in it long enough. The sphere in my palm was steady. The glyphs were steady. The signal, whatever it was, whatever I was carrying in the bioelectricity of my nervous system without knowing it, had apparently said what it needed to say by simply being received. Eventually the warmth began to ease. Not disappear, ease. The sphere went from searching to arrived. The frequency in the wall panels softened back below hearing. The glyph light stepped down from brilliant to steady to a low, quiet amber that would, I would later learn, not go out again. VOR 11-0044 would be recatalogued. Its status field would change from dormant to something the repository's senior linguists would spend 3 years arguing about. Pelleran would write a report that ran to 40 pages and still did not quite explain what she had witnessed, because the thing she had witnessed did not have a precedent in the repository's 800-year archive. She never asked me to explain what I had done. There was nothing to explain. I had picked up a sphere with bare hands because I had already put my gloves away, and the sphere had recognized me, and that was the whole of it. I finished my compliance inventory. I set the sphere back in its case. It let me, now, and I entered the final status line on the tablet. The form had a field for condition notes, and I sat on the subvault floor with my back against the shelf, the sphere's low amber glow the only warm light in the room, and I typed what I knew. Item status. Active. That was all I could say that was true. The sphere was active. It had been broadcasting for 4,200 years, and the signal had returned, and the signal was me, and I was a 29-year-old archivist with tired feet who had come into this room to finish a form. The repository sent me a new posting 6 weeks later. A deeper vault. Older artifacts. Things that had not spoken in longer than the Ossian sphere had been silent. I have not put my gloves on since.